Greetings and salutations, friend. I am Jeremy Tank, and it is delightful to be with you here today. Just so you know, I am I am so much today. I am thankful. I am grateful. I am helpful. I am spiritual. I am guided. I am here today and just ready to kind of chat with you and talk with you a little bit. Today is a bit of a reset day. Reset day. Wow, what does a reset day mean? A reset day is a day where we get a chance to kind of take a breath. Right? Feels good to just take a nice deep breath, recenter, reconfigure, refocus. And kind of, I like to think of each day as sort of a do-over. Because each day that we get up, we have a moment to think about what we want for the day. And that is exceptionally powerful. The ability to think about what we want, the things we're going to accomplish, the forward-thinking thoughts, the things we're going to build upon. So it's the paradigm there. It's the mindset. It's the foundation for whatever you're going to do next. And it starts with simply taking a breath and saying, what am I going to do today? This is going to be so much fun. Today, I want to talk a little bit about quantum theory, talk a little bit about who you are when you're not you, who you are and what this universe is and what this universe is doing for you on a moment-to-moment basis, and really to understand that, to create a foundation for that, even beyond quantum physics, certainly beyond Newtonian physics, which is, gravity and the base stuff that we see and feel and experience as part of this reality. Today, I want to talk about a couple of ideas, and it's kind of vague, it's kind of obtuse, but a lot of the things I talk about are obtuse. But here's the foundational piece. The foundational piece is really simply an acceptance of our limitedness and our limited ability to see, perceive, touch, taste, feel. Like, that's all very much within this realm of consciousness, this realm of being, this realm of self. And we are so much more than that, right? We are. Because, well, there's the religions that have told us that for ages, right? The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. We are so much more, so much everything. Certainly the spirituality of so many different ancient traditions, like Hinduism, Buddhism, Zen, Tao. And a lot of what those come down to is this concept of self beyond self, of an energy, a core, a being within. And depending on what you believe, what sect of the world you come from, there's part of that that's soul. Absolutely. There's part of that that's simply spirit, energy, frequency. And when we get down to it, we liken the idea of energy, frequency, self, soul, spirit, God, everything, right? Everything that is, was, can be, anywhere, to an ocean. And you are a drop in this ocean. I love being a drop in this ocean. It's fun, right? It's all these different experiences as part of this human life that we get to experience, that we get to see, feel, touch, taste, hear. It's all those senses. It's all the funny senses things. And the funny senses things is that those all come from the outside in. And really, you don't experience that, you don't grasp that, you don't know that, you don't feel that until it reaches the brain. And even then, the brain is just a cacophony of synaptic networks, of connections, electrochemical ideas firing and wiring together on a constant, frequent basis. Based on everything you've ever known, based on everything you've ever experienced, seen, been told, touched, tasted, smelled. It's all sensory, right? Everything you are now is because of everything that you have been exposed to up till now. And there's a funny realm beyond that. There's a funny realm in the land of awakening. It's a joke in the metaphysical community, at least it's a joke to me. And the joke consists of this. If, 1% control the world and 4%, are going with the 1% and 5% are awake and 90% are not awake, what does that mean? Well, it means that you, by simply willing to say, okay, can my experience, can my beliefs, can my trust and faith in God, the universe, frequency, eternity, fate, be open to the interpretation that there is something more beyond what I am capable of knowing right this moment? That's the question to ask. And here's where we start. We're going to start with geometry, because it's the kind of the easiest way, and most difficult way, but easiest way to grasp something. And I am very visual, so an idea that is visual in metaphor works for me. It creates a foundation of understanding for me that I can picture in my head, even as I say it, there is going to be contradictions, comparisons, contrasts that I come up with as I go, just trying to come up with this metaphor to help you understand where you are and how you are what you are. And in geometry, we're going to start with the point. One point, and if you've studied algebra, this is usually xy. And hi, Teresa, nice to see you. And xy is a standard point, right? A point, if we're looking at in two-dimensionality, would be xy. X meaning left and right, y being up and down. If we're talking xyz, then that's left, right, up, down, and like backwards and forwards. And a point is just a singular. Boop, right there. Like put that tack in it, boop, right there. And it's just a single point, a single idea, a single concept, a single zone, a single thing. And the thing about a point is that particularly in the quantum world, particularly in the world of thought and imagination where we are playing right now, when we imagine an entire room, an expansive room, like, how about a gym, right? Let's take a standard school gym, take out everything inside of it, and paint the entire inside white and flood it with light. So it's just this expansive white zone. I'm going to go ahead and have you imagine that you are standing in the middle of that white room. And this white room around you is the universe. And you are going to just imagine one point, one tiny point, somewhere in this room. It can be on a wall in front of you. It can be in the midair, hovering somewhere right in front of you. I'm giving you this entire space to play in, and you get to place one point somewhere in this space. And I want you to walk right up to that point. I want you to walk right up to it. And as you get closer to this point, what I want you to imagine is that this point is not changing in size at all. As you get closer and closer to this point in this expansive room, you notice that this point is like the very tip of a pencil point, a sharpened pencil point. And it's very tip, and you get right up to it in space, right? And even as you get closer and closer and closer to this point, it doesn't change in size. Why? Because the idea of a point is the idea that it is a singular location, somewhere in space, somewhere in frequency, somewhere in time. And when you have a singular point, what that means is that as you get further away, it stays basically the same because it doesn't change. It's there for your perception. It is purely there for your imagination. The idea is that that point is there for you to locate something in your life, in this giant, massive gym that we are hanging out in, this white space all over. This is infinity in every direction. And as you get closer and further away from the point, it doesn't change in perception to you. You are always that point. You are examining that point. Now, what that effectively means, because this is the way that things work in our three-dimensional world, okay? What that means is that as we get further away from it, that point is technically getting larger so that you can perceive it in this expansive space. And as you get closer and closer and closer and closer to this point, What happens is the actual perception of this point is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so that as you approach, it appears to be the same size. Now, what this is not is a dot that's changing size. As much as it appears that way, it's just a marker. It's just an imaginary pin, right? Out there in the middle of space in this massive gym that we're calling the universe, that we're calling everything. And that dot is responding to you. And when we talk about particles and wavelengths in physics, in quantum physics, in all of these things, when we're talking about points in space and time, this is how we're talking about them. Because as we examine them, it's sort of like when you're on maps on your phone, right? You can zoom out so you can see the entire country, and you still see that little pin right where you want to go. And as you zoom in, the size of the pin doesn't change, even though the size of the landscape is changing all around. Because that pin is simply pointing at the location. It's your perception that is changing how big it appears in relation to everything else. So a point in the universe is just that. It is a point, a singular location. It can have an X, Y, and Z coordinate. That's if we were trying to track it in three-dimensional space. That's our space, right? If it's in two-dimensional space, like it were on a flat piece of paper, we would be tracking it X and Y. And wherever we put that point is just a symbol. It's a metaphor, really, for where that thing is in our perception. And that's all that matters, is that you are part of defining this point. This point and how relative big or small it is based on your perception inside this massive imaginary gym, this massive room that we are in. And inside of even the Maps app, right? It doesn't matter if Google Maps, Apple Maps, or any of the other maps. When you're looking at it, those pins stay the same size as you zoom in and around where you want to look at. And this is really how we perceive points in ourselves and physical pieces in our three-dimensional world in relation to ourselves. Points are imaginary. They are, they're points. They're simply things that exist, and we look in that direction of a point, and we judge it, we critique it, we observe it, and participate in its being a point, because relative to our closeness or distance from it, it changes. The further away we get, technically, that point becomes much larger. The closer we get, that point becomes much smaller. And in that way, even a defined point, based on our perception of it, becomes an infinite object of point. It's sort of like this. If you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and you want to go ahead and play a dare game, right? You get closer to each other and closer to each other, and each time you try to halve the distance. There's a famous theorem that basically states that you can never actually touch another person, another object, another thing, because as you halve the distance, there is always an infinite distance left to remain to be able to have. Have. H-A-L-F. Have. And this is essentially points. This is essentially the idea that there is infinite smallness and infinite largeness, and it depends on your perception, your viewing and participating with the whatever is being perceived. And in this universe of quantum physics, what we see is that the observation is tied to the observer, and you are the observer. And when you observe everything around you, the wave of quantum possibility, the waveform of possibility of everything being out there all the time energetically collapses because you observe it in point form based on who you are, right? And its infinite greatness and smallness changes depending on where you are in relation to that perception. Now I know that sounds kind of weird, but Okay, so I'm in an imaginary gym and I'm looking at a dot somewhere in midair that seems to stay the same size, and you're telling me, Jeremy, I'm telling you, and you're telling me, that essentially that perception, that interaction, is what transforms the basic space that is within an atom, within subatomic particles, into something that appears solid. Is that what you're saying? That is exactly what I'm saying. The reason so much of everything around us, even though we know that it's mostly space, even though we understand on a scientific level that it is not solid, because of our distance to it and our perception of that distance, and because a point in space will grow and shrink relative to our perception so that we perceive and measure that space, essentially that tricks your brain, your mind, into the perception, your consciousness, really. That tricks your consciousness through your brain, through the perception of your eyes, your ears, your mouth, all that stuff. It tricks it into believing something is solid, even though it is farther and smaller than it actually is, so your brain can understand it. This is essentially the way that your mind confers reality around you. And I say confers because it is a gift, this reality. It is you being the observer and your mind collapsing the waveforms. You are creating that reality by shifting your knowledge about all of these points into one point. Of course, that's one atom, that's one subatomic particle, that's one piece of the puzzle, and there are trillions, if not more, in this ocean of energy of which you are a part. So if that's a point, and I love points. Points are awesome. Stars, a point, right? Those gorgeous stars. You go out and you look at them, and they're massive and huge. And if you don't see them, if you don't recognize them, if you don't observe them, do they exist? So the next one I want to talk about is line. So we've got point and line. And line is, if we took that point in the middle of our gym and we put one other point somewhere in that gym, anywhere, I don't even care. You can make it up. It could be back where the bleachers used to be, but we took those bleachers out. Now that's just a blank room. So let's go ahead and imagine a point right back there. Let's go ahead and connect our 2 points with a line. Now this line, we can call it a vector. Because by connecting these 2 points, what we've done is created a continuum through our infinite universe. And on this continuum is literally every point in between, of which we know there is essentially infinite, right? Because they're infinitely small and infinitely large, and it depends on your proximity, your observation of it, that determines the size of that point. And so on this line that we've just created is every point possible. But this line has no actual thickness. This line has no actual length because it's infinite. It just continues in both directions. Once it touches those 2 points, it just continues on forever. And just like the point, the closer you get, the more it seems to shrink, and the further away you get, the more it seems to grow. So it takes up an infinite width and an infinite depth, even though there is no width and no depth. It is your perception of it that creates the effect of width and depth. Now, what this is really representing to our mind is the spectrum of points. It's a continuum. I'm using the word continuum today a lot. This is very interesting. It's an idea that one thing can lead to a next. That there is a series, a tangential, hey, this could be next sort of idea. And this is definitely built in the human brain. This is definitely something that comes to us through our perception of the reality of the world as it is. Because not all things actually connect. Not all things are parallel to each other or connected to each other, or you can't always draw a line through things. And we as humans actually seem to connect a lot more through mind, through this idea of, oh, these 2 things must be connected. We like to do this because we like that idea of contrast. We like the idea of a spectrum. We like that idea of motion and time. That is our reality. And so we place that sort of reality, that sort of structure on things not based in our reality. This is the reason I'm telling you this, because the idea of line is just that, an idea. It's a metaphor for, as you get closer, these are all points lined up that create a line, that create movement, that create energy. And each point slightly different. Each point slightly different. That's fascinating, because that, when we register the difference between it, when we register it in our brain, the way that we perceive that through vibration, through taste, through sight, the way that we perceive those things is that there is a correlation, if not causation, between them, even though that may or may not be the truth in actuality, in quantum physics. Like, there may be no cause. This may be butterfly effect, chaos theory, things connected that do not seem connected. So the last piece of geometry I want to go over today is plane. And the best way to imagine plane is, let's imagine ourselves back in this giant gym, painted white, space everywhere, right? It's very calming, this white. It's a little unnerving, actually. Because all of that white is possibility. And what that says is that anywhere within this space that we have created, we can create a plane. And a plane is a flat area with infinite width and infinite depth and no height, none. So what that means is, if we take our point, extrapolate it out on a line, now that line is going to continue in both directions infinitely. So if we go ahead and say, okay, since that is infinite both directions there, let's cross that at 90 degrees exactly perpendicular to it, and let's go ahead and extend infinite that way. Imagine you're standing on the ground in this gym, and that ground continued on forever in all directions. That's a plane. So within this everything everywhere plane, what we're imagining is the idea of energy, possibility, frequency, light, dark. If it helps, imagine numbers. Imagine somewhere in this infinite plane that we are standing on, it goes in all directions, and somewhere there's a 0, 0 point. Somewhere there's a point that is the exact middle of infinite this way and the exact middle of infinite, whichever way. It's all the different directions, right? And at perfect zero, it's just perfect zero, and somewhere in the rest of it is infinity. And wherever you are standing is a point on infinity. Meaning, you are on a point. Meaning you are perceiving yourself on a point of infinity, and the closer that you get to examining that, the smaller it gets. And the further away you get, the more you can give yourself space and just kind of examine yourself, the larger it gets, the easier it is to see yourself. There's some funky little metaphysical math going on there, huh? So, the idea of plane is just that in any amount of space, there's infinite. Because as you calculate, a plane simply goes in all directions at all times. And within that, really, are infinite lines going in all directions at all times, infinitely. And within that are infinite points everywhere at all times. And this is the reason that quantum physics is so dang tricky. Because when we start to imagine that in a space, inside of that gym, the floor that you're standing on being a plane, that's infinite energy on just that plane. And when we go ahead and take that plane and extrapolate and fill that entire gym, fill you right on up from the ground right up to the ceiling, and we imagine how many planes it would take to fill that space, it's infinite. Okay? Because the more we look at it, the more we break down the spaces, the more planes we can fit in there. If we say that every plane takes up a certain amount of height, if every plane took up 1 inch of height? How about 1 foot of height, okay? Gyms are about 20 feet tall, so 1 foot of height means you fit 20 in that space, but you can break that down further. You can fit 30 in that space because they don't take up 1 foot of height. They don't take up any height. So you can fit 100, you could fit 1,000, you could fit 1,000,000, you could fit infinity planes up and down, left and right, all in that space. And this is exactly what quantum physics is trying to tell us. Given the geometry of everythingness and how abstract this is. We like to think about squares and triangles and circles, and we're taught in high school and junior high, here's the math to be able to go ahead and calculate the perimeter, the diameter of these shapes, the area of these shapes, here's the angle, here's how you figure out the angles of these shapes, and all that is fantastic because all that is very Newtonian. It's how we got to the moon, right? It's how we send rockets into space all the time. But as we look at this on a quantum level, what we see is literally between the infinity of points, the infinity of lines, and the infinity of space within the planes, going vertically and horizontally, what we see is that if all of those include the infinity of numbers, and again, start at 0, go to positive infinity one direction, negative infinity the other direction, and know that those probably don't line up if you stacked all these planes on top of each other. It's just crazy math, because what that's telling you is literally everything can be anywhere, everywhere, all at the same time. And yet, as we look at it, as we examine it, as we get closer to it, it seems to get smaller and smaller to define more and more of the exact point. It's not just 10, it's 1. It's not just 1, it's 1.3. It's not just 1.3, it's 1.319. It's 1.319543. Like, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. We can keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And on the other side, we can keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the geometry of the infinite. It's when we get down to brass tacks about, trying to figure out quantum science, about the waves of possibility and why quantum science holds all of this ocean of energy, it's just that there is possibility. It's just that there is everythingness. And when we look at it in the pure definitions of these geometric shapes, we see that really to perceive the possibility of everything, we have to accept infinite as a possibility. And then we have to accept that our perception of the infinite and our perception of points and lines in our life around us is based on how we examine that point, that line, that plane, and the piece of it that is our experience, our observation, our participation. Because that is what's feeding back into our mind, our brain, our consciousness, and letting us know that we are truly here and sharing information with all of these energies. And it's also telling us that there's so much more that we can tap into, so much more in the infinite potential of the universe, so much more with the double slit experiment, forwards and backwards in time, like so much more than we even actually understand. And as we start to wake up, we start to realize more and more that we are capable of influencing all of that energy. We are capable of harnessing it, influencing it, tapping into it for ourselves. Because that's a powerful force out there. And that's just for us. So tomorrow I'm actually going to go into, the next steps here. Like, what are you in all of this infinite energy? How did you get to be you? And what? That's the fun one. I call it the funnel. It's the funnel. Okay, so that's all for today. If this is your first time watching me, thank you so much for watching me. I am Jeremy Tank. I am a expert in behavioral branding. I am a master designer. I am also an RTT hypnotherapist, helping you get over abundance blocks, success blocks, wealth blocks, leadership blocks. And right now I am doing I'm offering RTT sessions for hypnotherapy. If you're interested in that sort of thing, just go ahead and write a comment down below or send me a message. I'm also doing coaching, consulting right now. If you want to check that out, go to my website, www.thinktankcreative.net. That will be changing and shifting. I'm working on a few things right now to really bring more of what you guys want and need, a lot of this kind of stuff into leadership training, into the coaching, consulting, really bringing your vision to life as you take charge of your life and start to live the life you want to live, harnessing the energy all around us to make your life exactly what you want it to be. That's friggin' exciting. I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Teresa. You are always there for me. Thank you so much, my friend. And to everybody else, I wish you well and God bless. Love you. Bye.